I guess the sheriff down there should be getting some more media attention. Shooting plot exposed. You won't believe who set it up. Let the media sell you the same sob story about how we need more gun control in this country. This is all about corrupt politicians and money. The last week or so, the entire nation has been talking about gun control, or at least the media has been talking about it. The sudden tsunami of gun control stories, articles, segments as a result of the terrible mass shootings that took place at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in beautiful Parkland, Florida. Sadly, the focus on gun control has caused the media and people who get their news from the media to miss the far larger scandal revolving around Douglas High School. First, let me be clear, I'm not talking about the scandal of 4 police officers being on the scene when the shooting began, but who chose to do nothing while waiting outside for backup. This is a scandal in and of itself, no doubt, that should be investigated. The police force that allowed this to happen should be shamed for it. The shooting could and should have been far less bloody if only these officers had done what their community expected them to do. Secondly, it's not about the scandal unfolding about the FBI who knew about Nicholas Cruz, so on and so forth, okay? Finally, this isn't about how a troubled young man, so clearly mentally and emotionally distressed, ran afoul of love so often, but still somehow was able to pass a background check to purchase a firearm. Nope. This piece is about how, at every level, the corruption failed us by not enforcing our laws and even abiding by simple, logical standards of behavior. Before I get into this, let me give credit to the folks of the Last Refuge who wrote at the Conservation Treehouse and did much of their legwork on this long story before the shooting at Douglas High School. In fact, the Last Refuge was investigating this story a year ago in the wake of the Trevor Martin shooting. I was able to independently confirm much of what the Last Refuge reported. See his Twitter thread on this story here. When I spoke on conditions of anonymity and several sources which works with the Brownard School District. The scandal that the media is ignoring, but is probably the most important of this story, involves the Broward County School District, local police agency, colluding to lay the foundation of the Douglas High School tragedy. What do I mean? The story began about 6 years ago in Miami-Dade County, where school district was struggling to succeed. All this data painted a picture of a failing school district. The district noticed that large portions of the school population were being arrested at a higher proportion than the rest of the community, and they realized if they could just cut down on the criminality of their students, they could quickly improve the data coming out of the schools. With this in mind, the school district entered into a relationship with the local police force and concluded a deal that would ensure that the police would stop arresting so many students. Okay, this is a media advisor. You got to read this. Within a year or two, surrounding communities began to notice a change in Miami-Dade's fortunes, which included a new influx of money, and Broward County decided it was time for them to enter into a similar deal with their local police force. The Broward County School Board and District Superintendent into a political arrangement with the Broward County law enforcement officials to stop arresting students for crime. The motive was simple. School system administrators wanted to improve their statistics and gain state federal aid grant money for improvements. It's important to remember that this was not an arbitrary change. This was a well-planned fundamental change in the entire dynamics of how teenagers would be treated when engaged in criminal conduct. Okay? I'm sure you've already seen the problem with the police in South Florida entering to these deals with their local school districts. In a very real way, the new policies made public school students above the law. These policies conflicted with the laws that the police officers have long been trained to follow, but now allowed students to act as they wish without fear of the consequences. At first, the police were only excused in misdemeanors, but soon they were also excused in felonies, including violent crimes like assault, armed robbery, and worse. You can see where this is coming from. Once the system seemed to be working, the district needed the police to continue lowering arrests year over year, which meant that the police were more forced to excuse ever more severe criminal acts. Over time, the most severe unlawful conduct was being filtered by responding police. We found out that this when 6 cops blew the whistle on several criminal conducts that they were being instructed to hide. The sheriff and the police chiefs were telling street cops and school cops to ignore overworsening criminal conduct. The police were in a bind. They were encountering evidence of criminal conduct, yet they had to hide the conduct. There were examples of burglary, robbery, where the police had to hide it to recover evidence in order to let the kids get away without reports. The police would take the stolen merchandise and intentionally falsify police records to stolen items as if they just found it on the side of the road. They put drugs and stolen merchandise in bags, sent it to storage rooms in the police department, never assigning the recovery to criminal conduct. Stolen merchandise was just in the storage rooms gathering dust. They couldn't get the stuff back to the victim because that would mean the police would have to explain how they took custody of it, so they just hid it. To prove that this was happening, one of the officers told me where to look and who the victim was. According to the refuge, an internal investigation was carried out, but the results were buried because it was found it was not political or economically expedient for the county. The years that followed, youth crime in Miami-Dade, Broward grew steadily worse. An odd quota system developed, and uncertain numbers of high school students have been arrested in the county. Leadership would make sure that the crimes committed would be excused. To make matters worse, as far as it was bad enough, gangs quickly caught on to the scheme and beginning to use high school students to commit more of their crimes. They began planning their biggest, most important activities later in the month, later in the quarters, when the schools were collecting their data for reporting. This way, the gangs could take advantage of commuting their crimes at the time when the police would be most likely to give the high school-aged members a pass. Now we're getting close to how this all led to the Douglas High School shooting. With the intricate nature of the relationship between the police and schools, it became vital that the school resource officer placed at the schools understood how the symbolic relationship between the district and the police was supposed to work. They needed SROs who are adept at ensuring the criminal activities of their students would not be reported as crimes and endanger the district's political and financial fortunes. This is why much of the demonized SRO Scott Peterson, who infamously stood outside the school while the massacre was in progress, likely refused to share information on his shooter with social services back in 2016. The problems with the SROs in South Florida are not anything new. Other investigations have uncovered questionable behavior, but again, it was conveniently to end the practice. In the wake of the Douglas High School shooting, the problems are too big to go hide. Sadly, instead of covering the ongoing corruption and law that has been happening in Miami-Dade and Broward County since 2012, the media has chosen to focus their fire on gun control. Instead of worrying about guns, the media should have been asking, how could local police pay 39 different visits, claim it was only 23 to one student without that student ever spending significant time in prison or a psychiatric ward? They should be asking the local police wouldn't share the information. Why? The truth is our laws and law enforcement procedures were enough to stop the Douglas High School shootings before it even happened. But because of the corruption sowed by the Broward County School District and the local police leaders, these laws and procedures were ignored. If the procedures and laws had been followed, Cruz would have never been able to purchase a gun. He'd already been incarcerated and he would not have had the opportunity to kill 17 people. The case isn't about guns, and the answer isn't more gun control. The case is about school districts lying to their families in an effort to get more money and more political influence. Oh, everybody wants control, even our government. It's about local police forces being willing to ignore crime, refusing to abide by the laws they promised they would uphold. It's about government failures at every level and how that corruption and failure led to the death of 17 innocent kids. Don't let the media sell you some sob story about how we need more gun control in this country. This is all about corrupt politicians and money. Thanks for watching, guys, and I rushed through there because I didn't want to run out of time. This is very important, and this goes on a lot more than we know. And this goes so high. I mean, I imagine if we really knew, we'd be shaking in our boots, pulling the hair out of our heads. Thanks for watching, guys.